seem to be normal kids, but there's something off, something unusual, and when people come in contact with them, they have an eerie, disturbing feeling. Tonight we will be looking at the case of the Black-Eyed Kids. Have you heard about the Black-Eyed Kids? Perhaps you've heard murmurs and rumors of what they are. So this evening I'm going to assume that you may not know anything or know very little about the Black-Eyed Kids. So what exactly are Black-Eyed Kids? As the name implies, they are children, or should I say, children-like creatures that appear to look like adolescents around the age, let's say 6, 7, 8, as far up as 16. While the eyes are indeed the prominent feature of this particular child, there are other features to look for. Other features include clothing that may seem a little bit off, perhaps off style by quite a bit of time. And also another feature that may be visible if you're not hypnotized by the black eyes is the skin. There's something about the skin that doesn't seem quite right. It's almost as though it's fake skin. Now you might be asking, well, aren't you just picking on a kid that maybe the style is a little off and maybe have a skin problem, perhaps? It may very well be true that may be the case. But another feature is also in a tone of voice. The voice the people claim is that it's like a robotic, monotone voice. And while it's true that if a kid really wanted to mess with someone, they can put on some black contacts, wear some old clothes, and speak in a monotone voice. But there's something else that people claim to witness, or should I say, experience. While these are all physical features in which people claim to have seen, one of the other experiences they have when dealing with these kids is a sense of uneasiness that comes with them. Because, after all, kids don't usually give an unease when you speak with them, when you interact with them. Indeed, these people claim to have this sudden flight or fight feeling and a sense of hypnotism that occurs, and a sense of dread, all pieced together. This is the kind of feeling that, even if it was a normal kid just messing around with contacts and all that jazz, there still wouldn't be a unusual amount of dread. Which brings an interesting point to this so-called urban legend. Many folks that have encountered these creatures claim that they are indeed dangerous. Extremely dangerous. A danger that goes beyond just a regular adolescent. Indeed, there is a sense of unease, terror coming from these creatures. So if you're not familiar with a typical story of the Black-Eyed Kids, it goes something like this. Imagine you are home one evening and you receive a knock at the door. So you check the peephole or you check your app to see who's at the door, and you see that it's a small child. Curiously, you open the door and you see that the child is by himself, or maybe with another one. They're both looking down. Usually they have a hood over their heads, or perhaps maybe a baseball cap. And as you ask what you can do for them, they give a simple, almost prefabricated response. Maybe you're just thinking, well, maybe it's just a kid being shy. So you try to pry a little bit more information from this child, wondering why he or she is at your door, and as you continue your progression in this conversation, you begin to realize that you're getting nowhere fast. And as you're trying to figure out what's going on, you can't seem to shake off this weird sense of danger that seems juxtaposed with this seemingly innocent child. And so, as the conversation continues, you begin to realize that the voice seems off. It's almost robotic. It seems very monotone. It seems out of place. And while it's certainly possible that a child may be just messing with you just to get a rise, there's this unsettling feeling in the pit of your stomach. And for some reason, even though the child keeps repeating him or herself, you get hypnotized by this conversation. And at the same time, just feeling like, should I shut the door? But then things turn as the child begins to slowly reveal the face. And in that face are two pools of black where there should be eyes. The black eyes of the Black-Eyed Kids. You suddenly find yourself snapped out of a unusual trance, and the fight or flight feeling kicks in. And so, in a surging sense of fear, you slam the door, and suddenly it's like you come to your senses, and you begin to wonder whether or not you just slammed the door on a child, or did you slam a door on something else? Something inhuman. Something of the unknown. So what is it about the Black-Eyed Kids wanting to get into your homes? Because as the stories go, they get more and more aggressive with their requests. And it ultimately leads to one thing: to get into your house. And they get angry, and they get more violent sometimes. So what is it? And has anyone let the black-eyed kids into their house? We'll look at such a tale. But first, let's look at some other stories involving the black-eyed kids. One of the stories that people bring up when talking about the black-eyed kids is the one recounted by Brian Bethel. Mr. Bethel's story goes back to 1996 in Abilene, Texas. So the story goes like this. He was on his way to pay an electric bill, and he stopped by a theater to use the marquee lights to finish whatever he was doing. And all of a sudden, these two kids appeared. And so these kids, they wanted a ride or something, and for some reason, Brian, he was getting this weird sensation, right? I mean, these just kids, kind of like how we were talking about earlier. And well, these kids started getting more upset, and he didn't feel comfortable in getting them in, and so he ended up taking off. And so one kid, he was really kind of confused looking, and the other one that was doing all the talking, he was pretty upset over it. So an accumulation of different accounts also has these kids showing up in remote places of the wilderness. There's been several videos allegedly showing these random kids showing up in the middle of the woods. You see, these people, they would have cameras set up to look for, or to keep up with wildlife, for tagging purposes and for tracking and all. And they'll have these cameras to kind of keep in touch with them, and they'll get these pictures back. And when they do, there in the picture with the wilderness and the animals is a random kid. Speaking of wilderness, another intriguing piece of evidence that people often refer to for this is one shot in the UK when someone used a drone to just kind of scour around the wilderness, and later found out that there was something lurking within the trees. And they say that this creature may have very well been a black-eyed kid. And so, as you begin to start noticing in other stories that you'll gather, is they show up in the middle of nowhere, where it's desolate or abandoned, out in the wilderness, like the two examples. And if you're home at night, or during the earlier part of the evenings, then they'll show up at your house, they'll show up at your door, they'll show up by your car. And in those instances, it goes back to wanting to do one thing: entry. Entry into your car, entry into your house. Because as people are quick to tell you, they tend to say that they need you to allow them to come into either your house, your car, or whatever it is. They need permission to get in. That is the one thing that is very consistent about these occurrences with the black-eyed kids. Now let's go to a story about letting them in. Now this story comes from the website called The Week in Weird. The story is an account of a lady letting these little turds in her house. It was during a snowstorm up in a small town in Vermont one night when she heard a knock at the door. Long story short, 2 children in odd bowl cuts were at the door, stating that they will be here soon. Thinking the kids were in an accident, the wife and husband let them in. One of the things that they noticed was that their cats were behaving oddly, as if something was off. The wife made some hot cocoa, and when she brought them their drink, it was then she noticed the black eyes. And then odd things began to happen, like a dizzy spell, a nosebleed, and ultimately the power cutting off. And since the kids left, the husband has had repeated nosebleeds and actually had aggressive melanoma. And that's without being outdoors or tanning or anything like that. Another account from The Week in Weird claims that a friend died from one of these encounters. Is there truth to these stories? A link of these stories will be included below. When you start to think about it, it's interesting in regards of like other things, such as vampires. They say that vampires need permissions to come into your house. Or if you happen to use a Ouija board, which I don't recommend you do, but if you decide to do it, you are inviting spirits in. And there's other activities that involve inviting something in. So is there a correlation to it, or is it just pure coincidence? Or is it all bogus? Is it just nothing but urban legends? Now, as far as theories on what the black-eyed kids actually are, again, some say it's just made-up stories, or if there are people that are out there, it's probably kids with just contacts, which, again, it's very easy to do. Very easy to just put on some contacts and makeup and just kind of mess with people. But again, it goes back to that people say that there's this weird, unnerving sense of feeling when dealing with these kids. So, if they're not kids, are they demons? Because, after all, something as innocent as a child could be used as just a front for something demonic. And how twisted would it be if a child is used, or a childlike image is used to mess with people? Another interesting theory is that maybe these are alien hybrids. Yes, that the reason why they have those black eyes is because they are part alien. Could it be that these are alien human children? Maybe we'll never know. Another intriguing idea that is floating around is that perhaps these are just full-blooded aliens, dressed up as children, as many say and claim that alien greys are little, about the size of children. Or another idea is that these are constructed robots, again made by aliens. Or could it be a government agent, as in these were created for some weird testing on people by the government? After all, nobody believed MK Ultra existed until it came out that it was true. And the stories about MK Ultra are pretty bizarre. And those we'll talk about another day. Another theory that is circulating is that maybe these are just ghosts that appear as children, and that the way that they look is just the way they manifest themselves. These are all interesting stories and theories, but it's up to you to decide on whether or not it's real, or if any of it is truth. Regardless of what it is, the stories are out there, and people claim that this is real. So are they just good stories to tell over the campfire? Or is it a case of something of the unusual and the unknown? Thank you for watching tonight's episode, and I hope that you found it very fascinating. And be sure to check out upcoming videos coming soon. And thank you for watching, and have a wonderful night. Take care, and remember to stay intrigued.